Welcome to Lost Scrolls Archive. 2 women, 1 man, a single promise from God. What happened in Abraham's tent 4,000 years ago set in motion a conflict that would span millennia and reshape the entire world. This isn't just ancient history, it's the origin story of a struggle that dominates today's headlines. How did 2 half-brothers born to the same father become the ancestors of peoples locked in one of history's longest conflicts? The answer lies buried in the pages of the Bible, in stories of divine promises, family betrayals, and a small strip of land that 3 major religions claim as holy. From the deserts of ancient Mesopotamia to the Roman destruction of Jerusalem, from the rise of Islam to the birth of modern nations, every chapter of this saga adds another layer to a conflict that refuses to end. The seeds planted in Genesis are still bearing fruit today. Bitter fruit that affects millions of lives. This is not a story with heroes and villains. It's a tragedy written across centuries where both sides trace their roots to the same patriarch and the same God. Ready to understand how we got here? Let's go back to the beginning. The story begins in a place called of the Chaldeans, an ancient city in Mesopotamia. A man named Abraham lived there with his wife Sarai and his father Terah. Life was ordinary until God spoke. In Genesis 12:1-3, we read God's words to Abram, "Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, and to a land that I will show thee, and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing, and I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed." This wasn't a suggestion. It was a command with a promise attached. God was asking Abram to leave everything familiar, his homeland, his relatives, his father's household, and go to a place he'd never seen before. But the promise was massive. God would make him into a great nation. His name would become great. Through him, every family on earth would receive blessing. This was the beginning of something that would change history forever. Abram obeyed. Genesis 12:4-5 tells us, "So Abram departed, as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they forth to go into the land of Canaan. And into the land of Canaan they came. At 75 years old, Abram packed up everything, and traveled to Canaan. When he arrived, God appeared to him again. Genesis 12:7 records this moment. "And the Lord appeared unto Abram, and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land. And there builded he an altar unto the Lord, who appeared unto him." This was the first time God specifically mentioned the land itself. Not just any land, but this land, Canaan, would belong to Abram's descendants. The promise now had a location. A physical place on earth was being designated for Abram's future children. Years passed. Abram and Sarai traveled through Canaan, building altars and calling on God's name. But there was one problem, growing larger with each passing year. Sarai had no children. In Genesis 16:1, the text states plainly, "Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar." 10 years had gone by since they arrived in Canaan. Abram was now 85 years old, and Sarai was 75. The promise of descendants seemed impossible. Sarai decided to take matters into her own hands. Genesis chapter 16 verse 23 shows her plan. "And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband, Abram, to be his wife." This was a cultural practice of that time. If a wife couldn't have children, she could offer her servant to her husband, and any child born would legally belong to the wife. It seemed like a reasonable solution. Abram agreed, and Hagar conceived. Genesis 16:4 tells us what happened next. "And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. The moment Hagar knew she was pregnant, everything changed. She looked at Sarai differently. The servant now carried something her mistress couldn't produce, a child for Abram. The power dynamic shifted, and pride crept into Hagar's heart. Genesis 16:15-16 records the birth. And Hagar bare Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. Abram was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. He had a son. The promise seemed to be coming true, even if through an unexpected path, but the household was not peaceful. The relationship between Sarai and Hagar had already fractured before Ishmael was even born. Genesis 16:4-6 captures the conflict. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between me and thee. But Abram said unto Sarai, Behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it blessed thee. And when Sarai yielded hardly with her, she fled from her face. Sarai felt disrespected in her own home. She blamed Abram, even though the plan had been her idea. Abram, perhaps unwisely, told Sarai to handle it however she wanted. Sarai treated Hagar so harshly that Hagar ran away into the wilderness. She was pregnant and alone in the desert. An angel of the Lord found Hagar by a spring of water. Genesis 16:91 records their conversation. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. God told Hagar to go back and submit to Sarai, but he also gave her a promise. Her descendants would be too many to count. Her son would be called Ishmael, which means God hears, because God had heard her suffering. Hagar returned to Abram's household, but the tension remained. 2 women under one roof, one barren and one fertile, one mistress and one servant. It was a situation destined for conflict. 13 more years passed. Ishmael grew into a young teenager. Then God appeared to Abram again, with a new revelation. In Genesis 17:15, God spoke, and when Abram was 90 years old and 9, the Lord appeared to Abram, and said unto him, I am the Almighty God. Walk before me, and be thou perfect, and I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face. And God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shalt thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee. God changed Abram's name to Abraham, meaning father of many nations. Then he changed Sarai's name to Sarah. But the most shocking part came next. Genesis 17:56 says, And God said unto Abraham, As for Sarai thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall her name be, and I will bless her, and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. Abraham's response was human and understandable. Genesis 17:17 tells us, Then Abraham fell upon his face, and laughed, and said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old, and shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? He laughed, not from joy, but from disbelief. He was 99 years old. Sarah was 89. The very idea seemed absurd. Abraham even suggested an alternative. Genesis 17:18 records his words. And Abraham said unto God, O that Ishmael might live before thee. He already had Ishmael. Couldn't the promise be fulfilled through him? But God's answer was clear. Genesis 17:19 states, And God said, Sarah, thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him, for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. The child would come through Sarah, not Hagar. His name would be Isaac, meaning laughter. God's covenant, the promises, the land, The future would continue through Isaac. A year later, exactly as God promised, Sarah conceived. Genesis 21:13 describes the miracle. And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. Sarah herself could hardly believe it. Genesis 2:16-7 captures her joy. And Sarah said, God hath made me to laugh, so that all Tihat here will laugh with me. And she said, Who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah should have given children suck? For I have borne him a son in his old age. What seemed impossible had happened. The promised child had arrived, but joy in one part of the household brought pain to another. When Isaac was weaned, Abraham threw a great feast. Genesis 21:8-9 tells us what happened. And the child grew, and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham, mocking. Sarah saw Ishmael mocking Isaac. The exact nature of this mocking isn't described, but it was enough to trigger Sarah's protective instincts. Ishmael was now a teenager, perhaps 16 or 17 years old. Isaac was probably around 3. Sarah saw a threat. Genesis 21:10 records her demand. Wherefore she said unto Abraham, Cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. This wasn't just about mockery, it was about inheritance. Sarah wanted Ishmael gone, so there would be no question about who Abraham's heir was. Genesis 21:11 tells us Abraham's reaction. And the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son. Abraham was deeply troubled. Ishmael was his son too. He'd raised him for over a decade. How could he send him away? God intervened with clear direction. Genesis 2:13 records God's words. And God said unto Abraham, Let it not be grievous in thy sight, because of the lad, and because of thy bondwoman. In all that Sarah hath said unto thee, hearken unto her voice. For in Isaac shall thy seed be called, and also of the son of the bondwoman will I make a nation, because he is thy seed. God told Abraham to listen to Sarah. The covenant line would continue through Isaac, but Ishmael wouldn't be abandoned because he was Abraham's son. God would make him into a nation as well. Early the next morning, Abraham prepared bread and water for Hagar and Ishmael. Genesis 21:14 describes the departure. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and took bread and a bottle of water, and gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, and the child, and sent her away. And she departed, and wandered in the wilderness of Beerzah. They wandered in the wilderness. The water ran out. Genesis 2:15. 1:16 shows Hagar's despair, and the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs, and she went and sat her down over against him, a good way off, as it were. A bowshot, for she said, Let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him, and lift up her voice and wept, couldn't bear to watch her son die of thirst, but God heard the boy's price. Genesis 2:17, 7:19 records the rescue. And God heard the voice of the lad. And the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven, and said unto her, What thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and gave the lad drink. God saved them. He showed Hagar a well she hadn't seen before. They survived, and God's promise to Ishmael remained intact. 2 sons of Abraham now had 2 different futures. God had made specific promises to each, but they were not the same promises. For Isaac, God's covenant was clear and detailed. Genesis 17:1-9-1 spells it out. And God said, Sarah, thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. Isaac would inherit the everlasting covenant that included the land of Canaan, and the promise that all nations would be blessed through his descendants. Ishmael would be blessed, would be fruitful, would multiply, and would father 12 princes. He would become a great nation. But the covenant itself would go through Isaac. God's promise to Ishmael through Hagar was recorded in Genesis 16:10-1-2. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction, and he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. Ishmael would be a wild man, independent and fierce. His descendants would live in tension with others. He would dwell in the presence of his brothers, meaning his people would live near Isaac's people. This geographic proximity would matter greatly in the centuries to come. Genesis 21:20-21 describes Ishmael's future. And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness, and became an archer. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Pan. And his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. Ishmael grew up in the wilderness, became skilled with the bow, and married an Egyptian woman, connecting him back to his mother's homeland. When Abraham died many years later, both sons came together one final time. Genesis 25:9 records, And his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite, which is before Mamre. They buried their father together, but then went their separate ways. Genesis 25:12 lists Ishmael's descendants. Now these are the generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's handmaid, bare unto Abraham. And these are the names of the sons of Ishmael, by their names, according to their generations. The firstborn of Ishmael, Nebaggeh and Kedar, and Adil and Mibam, and Mishma and Duma and Massa, Hadar and Tamar, Jetu, Naphish and Kadma. These are the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names by their towns and by their castles, 12 princes according to their nations. And these are the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. And he gave up the ghost, and died, and was gathered unto his people. And they dwelt from Havilah unto Shurah, that is before Egypt, as thou goest toward Assyria. And he died in the presence of all his brethren. 12 princes, just as God promised. They settled in the Arabian region from Havilah to Shurah near Egypt. 2 branches of Abraham's family now existed, one through Isaac, one through Ishmael, with different destinies, but connected by blood. Isaac grew up, married Rebekah, and they had twin sons, Esau and Jacob. From birth, these brothers were in conflict. Genesis 25:21-26 describes their arrival. And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife, because she was barren, and the Lord was entreated of him. And Rebekah his wife conceived, and the children struggled together within her. And she said, If it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb, and the first came out red all over like an hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. Even in the womb they struggled. God told Rebekah that 2 nations were inside her, and the older would serve the younger. This was against custom. The firstborn son always received the greater inheritance and blessing, but God had a different plan. Esau came out first, covered in red hair. Jacob came out gripping Esau's heel, as if trying to pull him back. Years later, Esau came in from the field exhausted and hungry. Genesis 25:29-34 records, What happened? And Jacob saw pottage. And Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, Feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. And Jacob said, Sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, Behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me? And Jacob said, Swear to me this day. And he swore unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of Gentiles, and he did eat and drink, and rose up, and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright for a bowl of stew. Esau sold his birthright. The birthright meant the oldest son received a double portion of the inheritance and became head of the family. Esau treated it as worthless. Jacob, cunning and ambitious, seized the opportunity. But the birthright wasn't enough. Years later, when Isaac was old and blind, Rebekah and Jacob conspired to steal Esau's blessing. Genesis 27:18-24 describes the deception. And he came unto his father and said, My father. And he said, Here am I. Who art thou, my son? And Jacob said unto his father, I am Esau, thy firstborn. I have done, according as thou badest me. Arise, I pray thee, sit, and eat of my venison, that thy soul may bless me. And Isaac said unto his son, How is it that thou hast found it so quickly, my son? And he said, Because the Lord thy God brought it to me. And Isaac said unto Jacob, Come near, I pray thee, that I may feel thee, my son, whether thou be my very son Esau or not. And Jacob went near unto Isaac his father, and he felt him, and said, The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he discerned him not, because his hands were hairy as his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him, and he said, Art thou my very son, Esau? And he said, I am. Jacob wore Esau's clothes and goatskins on his arms, to feel hairy like his brother. He lied directly to his father's face. Isaac, deceived, gave Jacob the blessing meant for Esau. Genesis 27:27-29 records the blessing, and he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his raiment, and blessed him, and said, See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field, which the Lord hath blessed. Therefore God give thee of the dew of heaven, and the fatness of the earth, and plenty of corn, and wine. Let people serve thee, and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. Cursed be everyone that curseth thee, and blessed be he that bless thee. When Esau discovered what happened, he wept bitterly. Genesis 2:7-36 captures his anguish. And when Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with a great and exceeding bitter cry, and said unto his father, Bless me, even me also, O my father. And he said, Thy brother came with subtlety, and hath taken away thy blessing. And he said, Is not he rightly named Jacob? For he hath supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he hath taken away my blessing. And he said, Hast thou not reserved a blessing for me? Isaac had no blessing left equal to what he'd given Jacob. Esau hated Jacob and planned to kill him. Jacob had to flee, beginning a 20-year exile. But despite the deception, God's plan continued. Jacob was the one through whom the covenant would continue, and later God would change his name to Israel. Jacob fled to his uncle Laban's house in Haran, where he worked for 14 years to marry Laban's daughters, Leah and Rachel. Through these 2 wives and their handmaids, Jacob had 12 sons. Genesis 35:23-26 lists them. The sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon, and Levi, and Judah, and Issachar, and Zebulun, the sons of Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin, and the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, Dan and Naphtali, and the sons of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob, which were born to him in Padanaram. These 12 sons would become the 12 tribes of Israel. But before that could happen, the family faced a crisis. Jacob favored Joseph, Rachel's firstborn, above all his other sons. Genesis 37:34 tells us, Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him, and could not speak peaceably unto him. The brothers' jealousy turned to murderous rage when Joseph shared dreams, indicating he would rule over them. Genesis chapter 37:18-28 describes what they did. And when they saw him off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. And Reuben said unto them, Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him. And they took him, and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty, there was no water in it. Then there passed by Midianites merchantmen, and the eye drew, and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Israelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt. Joseph's brothers sold him to Ishmaelite traders, descendants of Abraham's other son. He was taken to Egypt as a slave. The brothers lied to Jacob, telling him Joseph was killed by a wild animal. But God was with Joseph in Egypt through a series of events involving false accusations and divine dreams. Joseph eventually became second in command to Pharaoh. Genesis 41:39, verse 1, records his promotion. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. Years later, famine struck the region. Jacob sent his sons to Egypt to buy grain, not knowing Joseph was alive and ruling there. When Joseph revealed himself to his brothers, they were terrified. But Joseph saw God's hand in everything. Genesis 45:48 shows his perspective. And Joseph said unto his brethren, Come near to me, I pray you. And they came near. And he said, I am Joseph your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now therefore, be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, that ye sold me hither. For God did send me before you to preserve life. And God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God, and he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Joseph brought the entire family to Egypt. Genesis 46:26-27 tells us the number, all the souls that came with Jacob into Egypt, which came out of his loins, besides Jacob's sons weave all. And the sons of Joseph, which were born him in Egypt, were 2 souls. All the souls of the house of Jacob, which came into Egypt, were 70. 70 people from Jacob's family settled in the land of Gan in Egypt. There they multiplied rapidly. Genesis 47:27 records. And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt in the country of Gan, and they had possessions therein, and grew and multiplied exceedingly. But after Joseph died, everything changed. A new Pharaoh rose who didn't remember Joseph or what he'd done for Egypt. Exodus 16:11 describes what happened. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed, exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And it come to pass that when therefore out any war, they join also unto our enemies, and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. The Israelites became slaves for 400 years. They would remain in bondage in Egypt exactly as God had foretold to Abraham. Genesis 15:13 had warned, and he said unto Abram, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. The descendants of Abraham through Isaac and Jacob were now enslaved in a foreign land far from the promised territory of Canaan. The Israelites had been slaves in Egypt for generations, when God raised up a deliverer. Moses, an Israelite raised in Pharaoh's palace, encountered God in a burning bush in the wilderness of Midian. Exodus 3:78 records God's words. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows, and I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land, unto a good land, and a large unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Jebusites. God had not forgotten his promise to Abraham. The time had come to bring his people back to the land he'd promised their ancestors. Moses returned to Egypt, and after 10 devastating plagues, Pharaoh finally released the Israelites. Exodus 12 hours 37 minutes and 38 seconds describes their departure. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men beside children. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle. 600,000 men plus women and children, perhaps 2 million people total, left Egypt. But Pharaoh changed his mind and pursued them with his army. God trapped the Egyptian forces at the Red Sea. Exodus 14:2 tells what happened. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. The Israelites crossed on dry ground, but when the Egyptians followed, the waters crashed down and destroyed them. Free at last, the people traveled to Mount Sinai. There, God gave Moses the law, commandments, and regulations that would govern how his people lived. Exodus 195:6 explains the purpose. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people. For all the earth is mine, and ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, and an holy nation. God was forming them into a nation with himself as their king. At Sinai, he gave them the 10 commandments and detailed instructions for worship, including plans for a portable sanctuary called the tabernacle. But the journey from Egypt to Canaan should have taken only weeks. Instead, it took 40 years. Numbers 13 and 14 explain why Moses sent 12 spies into Canaan to scout the land. Numbers 13:27-28 records their report. And they told him and said, We came unto the land whither thou sentest us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. Nevertheless, the people be strong that dwell in the land, and the cities are walled and very great. And moreover, we saw the children of Anchor there. The land was everything God promised, but the inhabitants were powerful, and the cities fortified. 10 of the 12 spies gave a terrifying report. Numbers 13:133 captures their fear. But the men that went up with him said, We be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Tariel, saying, The land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw in it are men of a great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Ankh, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. Only 2 spies, Joshua and Caleb, urged the people to trust God and enter the land. But the people refused. They wanted to return to Egypt. God's judgment was swift. Numbers 14 hours 28 minutes and 30 seconds records the sentence, "I unto them, as truly as I live, saith the Lord. As ye have spoken in mine ears, so will I do to you. Your carcasses shall fall in this wilderness, and all that were numbered of you, according to your whole number from 20 years old and upward, which have murmured against me. Doubtless ye shall not come into the land concerning which I swear to make you dwell therein, save Caleb the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua the son of Nun, and that entire generation would die in the wilderness. Only their children would enter the promised land. For 40 years the Israelites wandered, waiting for the faithless generation to pass away. During this time, God provided manna from heaven daily, and water from rocks. He gave them his law through Moses, teaching them how to live as his covenant people. Moses died within sight of the promised land, and leadership passed to Joshua. God's instructions to Joshua were clear. Joshua 12, for records God's command. Moses, my servant is dead. Now therefore, arise, go over this Jordan thou, and all this people unto the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel, every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you, as I said, unto Moses from the wilderness. And this Lebanon, even unto the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, and unto the great sea, toward the going down of the sun, shall be your coast. The land was theirs by divine promise. Now they had to possess it by faith and obedience. The Israelites crossed the Jordan River on dry ground, just as their parents had crossed the Red Sea. Their first target was Jericho, a fortified city blocking entrance into Canaan. Joshua 6:25 describes God's unusual battle plan. And the Lord said unto Joshua, See, I have given into thine hand Jericho, and the king thereof, and the mighty men of valor, and ye shall compass the city, all ye men of war, and go round about the city once. Thus shalt thou do 6 days, and 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns. And the 7th day ye shall compass the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow with the trumpets. And it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when ye hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall ascend up every man straight before him. For 6 days they marched around Jericho silently. On the 7th day they circled 7 times. The priests blew their trumpets, the people shouted, and the walls collapsed. Joshua 6:22-1 records the victory. So the people shouted when the priests blew with the trumpets. And it came to pass when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, and the people shouted with a great shout, that the wall fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him. And they took the city, and they utterly destroyed all that was in the city, both man and woman, young and old, and ox and sheep and ass, with the edge of the sword. From Jericho, Joshua led campaigns throughout Canaan. Joshua 10:4042 summarizes the southern campaign. So Joshua smoked all the country of the hills, and of the south, and of the vale, and of the springs, and all their kings. He left none remaining, but utterly destroyed all that breathed, as the Lord God of Israel commanded. And Joshua smote them from Kadesh Banana, even unto Gaza, and all the country of Gan, even unto Gaban. And all these kings and their land did Joshua take at one time, because the Lord God of Israel fought for Israel. Then came the northern campaign. Joshua 11:68 describes the extent. So Joshua took all that land, the hills, and all the south country, and all the land of Gan, and the valley Ye, and the plain, and the mountain of Israel, and the valley of the same, even from the Mount Hak that goeth up to Seir, even unto Balgard in the valley of Lebanon, under Mount Hermon, and all their kings he took, and smote them, and slew them. Joshua made war a long time with all those kings. After years of warfare, the land was subdued enough to divide among the tribes. Joshua 14:12 explains the distribution. And these are the countries which the children of Israel inherited in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest, and Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the Troll, children of Israel distributed for inheritance to them. By lot was their inheritance, as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses for the 9 tribes. And for the half-tribe, each tribe received territory, though the conquest wasn't complete. Joshua 13. One admits this reality. Now Joshua was old and stricken in years, and the Lord said unto him, Thou art old and stricken in years, and there remaineth yet very much land to be possessed. Many Canaanite peoples remained in the land, and the coastal region was controlled by the Philistines, a group of sea peoples who had settled there. Around the same time, Israel was conquering inland areas. After Joshua died, Israel entered a dark period. They had no king, no central government, just 12 tribes loosely connected by shared ancestry and religion. Judges 2:10 describes what happened. And also all that generation were gathered unto their fathers, and there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and served Balaam. And they forsook the Lord God of their fathers, which brought them out of the land of Egypt, and followed other gods of the people that were round about them, and bowed themselves unto them, and provoked the Lord to anger. The new generation forgot God and began worshipping Canaanite deities. God allowed surrounding nations to oppress them. When Israel cried out for help, God raised up judges, military leaders, and deliverers to rescue them. But the cycle repeated constantly. Israel sinned. God allowed oppression. Israel repented. God sent a judge. The judge delivered them. Then Israel sinned again. The Philistines became Israel's primary enemy. During this period, they controlled the coastal plain and possessed iron weapons and chariots, superior technology that gave them military advantage. Judges 13:1 states, "And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines 40 years. One of the most famous judges was Samson, who fought the Philistines single-handedly with supernatural strength. Judges 15:145 describes one of his victories. "And when he came unto Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him, and the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and the cords that were upon his arms became as flax that was burnt with fire, and his bands loosed from off his hands. And he found a new jawbone of an ass, and put forth his hand, and took it, and slew 1,000 men therewith." But even Samson couldn't break Philistine power permanently. The period of Judges lasted about 300 years, characterized by instability, moral decline, and constant warfare with neighboring peoples. Judges 21 verse 25 sums up the era. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Without unified leadership, Israel couldn't drive out their enemies or maintain faithfulness to God. God raised up Samuel as the last judge and first prophet of a new era. Samuel judged Israel faithfully, but as he grew old, the people demanded a change. 1 Samuel 8:45 records their request. "Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together, and came to Samuel unto Ramah, and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king, to judge us like all the nations." They wanted a king like surrounding nations had. Samuel was displeased. But God told him the people weren't rejecting Samuel. They were rejecting God as their king. God instructed Samuel to warn them what a human king would do, but ultimately to give them what they wanted. 1 Samuel 9:15 describes how God chose Israel's first king. "Now the Lord had told Samuel in his ear, a day before Saul came, saying, Tomorrow, about this time, I will send thee a man out of the land of Benjamin, and thou shalt anoint him to be captain over my people Israel, that he may save my people out of the hand of the Philistines. For I have looked upon my people, because their cry is come unto me. And when Samuel saw Saul, the Lord said unto him, Behold the man whom I spake to thee of, this same shall reign over my people." Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin, tall and impressive in appearance. Samuel anointed him privately, then publicly confirmed him as king. 1 Samuel 10:24 records the moment. "And Samuel said to all the people, See ye him whom the Lord hath chosen, that there is none like him among all the people. And all the people shouted, and said, God save the king." Saul's primary mission was clear: defeat the Philistines. His early reign showed promise. 1 Samuel 14 hours 47 minutes and 48 seconds summarizes his military campaigns. So Saul took the kingdom over Israel and fought against all his enemies on every side, against Moab, and against the children of Ammon, and against Edom, and against the kings of Zobah, and against the Philistines. And whithersoever he turned himself, he vexed them, and he gathered an host, and smote out the Amalekites, and delivered Israel out of the hands of them that spoiled them. But Saul repeatedly disobeyed God's direct commands. His kingship turned tragic. God rejected him as king, and sent Samuel to anoint a replacement, a young shepherd named David from Bethlehem. David first appears as a boy, bringing supplies to his brothers at the battlefront. There he encountered Goliath, a Philistine giant who challenged Israel's army. 1 Samuel 17:45-47 records David's faithful response. Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield. But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee. And I will give the carcasses of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. David killed Goliath with a sling and stone, then cut off his head with the giant's own sword. This victory made David a national hero and began his rise to power. Years of conflict followed between Saul's house and David's supporters. After Saul died in battle against the Philistines, David became king of Judah first, then eventually over all Israel. 2 Samuel 5 verses 1-3 describes his coronation. Then came all the tribes of Israel to David unto Hebron, and spake, saying, Behold, we are thy bone and thy flesh. Also in time past, when Saul was king over us, thou west he that leadest out, and broughtest in Israel. And the Lord said to thee, Thou shalt feed my people Israel, and thou shalt be a captain over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to the king to Hebron, and King David made a league with them in Hebron before the Lord. And they anointed David king over Israel. David's first strategic move was capturing Jerusalem from the Jebusites. 2 Samuel 56:7 records the conquest. And the king and his men went to Jerusalem unto the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, which spake unto David, saying, Except thou take away the blind and the lame, thou shalt not come in hither, thinking David cannot come in hither. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, the same as the city of David. Jerusalem became his capital, a city that belonged to no single tribe, positioned between the northern and southern territories, perfect for uniting the nation. David decisively defeated the Philistines. 2 Samuel 5:17-20 describes one key battle. But when the Philistines heard that they had anointed David king over Israel, all the Philistines came up to seek David. And David heard of it and went down to the hold. The Philistines also came and spread themselves in the valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go up to the Philistines? Wilt thou deliver them into mine hand? And the Lord said unto David, Go up, for I will doubtless deliver the Philistines into thine hand. And David came to Baal Perazim, and David smote them there, and said, The Lord hath broken forth upon mine enemies before me as the bee. Reach of waters. Under David, Israel's borders expanded to their greatest extent. 2 Samuel 8:1-6 summarizes his conquests. And after this, it came to pass that David smote the Philistines and subdued them. And David took Methagama out of the hand of the Philistines. And he smote Moab, and measured them with a line, casting them down to the ground. Even with 2 lines measured, he to put to death, and with 1 full line to keep alive. And so the Moabites became David's servants, and brought gifts. David's smokeoat also had the son of Rehob, king of Zobah, as he went to recover his border at the river Euphrates. And David took from him 1,000 chariots, and 700 horsemen, and 20,000 footmen. And David houghed all the chariot horses, but reserved of them for 100 chariots. And when the Syrians of Damascus came to succor Hadad, king of Zobah, David slew of the Syrians 22,000 men. Then David put garrisons in Syria of Damascus, and the Syrians became servants to David, and brought gifts. And the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went. David wanted to build a permanent temple for God, but God said no. Instead, God made David a promise. 2 Samuel 7:1-2, 1:13 records God's covenant with David. And when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels. And he shall build an house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. David's son would build the temple, and David's dynasty would last forever. Solomon became king after David's death. God appeared to Solomon in a dream, and offered him anything he wanted. 1 Kings 3:9 records Solomon's request, Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this, thy so great a people? Solomon asked for wisdom, to govern justly. God was pleased, and granted him not only wisdom, but also riches and honor. 1 Kings 4 hours 29 minutes and 31 seconds, describes Solomon's legendary wisdom. And God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding, exceeding much and largeness of heart, even as the sand that is on the seashore. And Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the children of the east country, and all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all men, than Ethan the Ezraite, and Heman, and Cal, and Dea, the sons of Mahal, and his fame was in all nations round about. Solomon's primary achievement was building the temple in Jerusalem. 1 Kings 6:12 records the beginning. And it came to pass, in the 480th year, after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month Zed, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of the Lord. And the house which King Solomon built for the Lord, the length thereof was 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof 20 cubits, and the height thereof 30 cubits. What is the temple took 7 years to build. When completed, Solomon brought the Ark of the Covenant into the Holy of Holies. 1 Kings 8:10-11 describes what happened. And it came to pass when the priests were come out of the holy place, that the cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priests could not stand to minister because of the cloud. For the glory of the Lord had filled the house of the Lord. God's presence filled the temple in visible form. Jerusalem was now not just the political capital, but the religious center of Israel. Solomon's reign was marked by unprecedented prosperity. 1 Kings 1023:2 describes his wealth. So King Solomon exceeded all the kings of the earth, for riches and for wisdom. And all the earth sought to Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his heart, and they brought every man his prah, essent vessels of silver, and vessels of gold, and garments and armor, and spices, horses and mules aratate year by year. Israel had peace, wealth, and international respect. But this golden age came at a cost. Solomon heavily taxed the people to fund his building projects and maintain his lavish court. Solomon's later years were marked by spiritual compromise. He married many foreign wives, who turned his heart toward their gods. 1 Kings 11:4-6 records his downfall. For it came to pass when Solomon was old, that his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. For Solomon went after Ash, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Milin, the abomination of the Ammonites. And Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord, and went not fully after the Lord, as did David his father. God pronounced judgment. The kingdom would be torn from Solomon's son, though one tribe would remain for David's sake. When Solomon died, his son Rehoboam became king. The people came with a request. 1 Kings 1:23-4 records their appeal that they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Roboam, saying, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father, and his heavy yoke which he put upon us, lighter, and we will serve thee. Roboam consulted his advisers. The elders counseled him to lighten the burden, but his young friends urged him to be even harsher. Rehoboam foolishly followed the young men's advice. 1 Kings 1:23-1:14 records his response. And the king answered the people roughly, and forsook the old men's counsel that they gave him, and spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, and I will add to your yoke. My father also chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. The 10 northern tribes immediately rebelled. 1 Kings 12:16 captures their declaration. So when all Israel saw that the king hearkened not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, What portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed unto their tents. They made Jeroboam their king, forming the northern kingdom of Israel. Only Judah and Benjamin remained loyal to Rehoboam, forming the southern kingdom of Judah. Jeroboam immediately created a spiritual problem. He feared that if his people went to Jerusalem to worship, they might return their loyalty to Judah's king. 1 Kings 12 hours 28 minutes and 30 seconds describes his solution. Whereupon the king took counsel, and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And he set the one in Bethel, and the other put he in Dan. And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan. The kingdom was now divided, Israel in the north with 10 tribes, Judah in the south with 2 tribes. They would never reunite. The divided kingdoms grew weaker. Israel, the northern kingdom, went through dynasty after dynasty, most marked by idolatry and injustice. God sent prophets to warn them, but they refused to listen. 2 Kings chapter 17:78 explains their sin. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel, and of the kings of Israel, which they had made. In 722 BC, the Assyrian Empire swept down from the north. 2 Kings 175:6 records the conquest. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land, and went up to Samaria, and besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hosea, the king of Assyria took Samaria, and carried Israel away into Assyria, and placed them in Hala, and in Haba, by the river of Goan, and in the cities of the Mess. The northern kingdom was destroyed. The Assyrians deported much of the population, and resettled foreigners in their place. The 10 northern tribes were scattered and lost to history. Judah survived another 136 years, but they followed the same path of idolatry. God sent prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel to warn them, but the people and their kings refused to repent. Babylon rose as the dominant power after Assyria fell. In 605 BC, Babylon began its conquest of Judah. 2 Kings 24:104 describes one deportation. At that time the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. And Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city, and his servants did besiege it. And Jehuk, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother, and his servants, and his princes, and his officers. And the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign. And he carried out then all the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold, which Solomon, king of Israel, had made in the temple of the Lord, as the Lord had said. And he carried away all Jerusalem, and all the princes, and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained, save the poorest sort of the people of the land. Babylon took the best and brightest into exile. 11 years later, when Judah's puppet king rebelled, Babylon returned to finish the job. 2 Kings 25:8-11 records Jerusalem's destruction. And in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which is the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. And he burnt the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and every great man's house burnt he with fire, and all the army of the Shies that were with the captain of the guard, brake down the walls of Jerusalem round about. Now the rest of the people that were left in the city, and the fugitives that fell away to the king of Babylon, with the remnant of the multitude, did Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carry away. Solomon's temple was destroyed. Jerusalem's walls were demolished. The royal line of David was deported to Babylon. The land God promised to Abraham lay in ruins, its people scattered among the nations. The Jews lived in Babylon for 70 years, exactly as the prophet Jeremiah had predicted. Then Persia conquered Babylon, and a new king took the throne. His name was Cyrus, and he did something unprecedented. Ezra 1:13 records his decree. Now in the 1st year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled. The Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, The Lord God of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he hath charged me to build him an house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah, who is there among you of all his people. His God be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of the Lord God of Israel. He is the God which is in Jerusalem. Cyrus gave the Jews permission to return home and rebuild God's temple. He even returned the temple treasures that Nebuchadnezzar had stolen. Ezra 178 tells us, Also Cyrus, the king, brought forth the vessels of the house of the Lord, which Nebuchadnezzar had brought forth out of Jerusalem, and had put them in the house of his gods. Even those did Cyrus, king of Persia, bring forth by the hand of Mithrath the treasurer, and numbered them unto Sheshbazzar, the prince of Judah. Nearly 50,000 people made the journey back to Jerusalem. Ezra 2:64-65 gives the count. The whole congregation together was 40 and 2, 33 score beside their servants and their maids, of whom there were 7,330 and 7. And there were among them 200 singing men and singing women. They returned to a ruined city and began rebuilding. The first priority was God's temple. Ezra 3:10-11 describes the foundation ceremony. And when the builders laid the foundation of the temple of the Lord, they set the priests in their apparel with trumpets, and the Levites, the sons of Asaph, with cymbals to praise the Lord after the ordinance of David, king of Israel. And they sang together by course in praising and giving thanks unto the Lord, because he is good, for his mercy endureth forever toward Israel. And all the people shouted with a great shout when they praised the Lord, because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. But the celebration was mixed with tears. Ezra 3:12 explains why. But many of the priests and Levites and chief of the fathers, who were ancient men that had seen the first house when the foundation of this house was laid before their eyes, wept with a loud voice, and many shouted aloud for joy. Woo! The old men who remembered Solomon's as magnificent temple wept because this new one seemed so small in comparison. Opposition from surrounding peoples slowed the work for years. Finally, encouraged by the prophets Haggai and Zechariah, the Jews completed the temple. Ezra 6:14-15 records the moment. And the elders of the Jews builded, and they prospered through the prophecy of Haggai, the prophet, and Zechariah, the son of Iddo. And they builded and finished it according to the commandment of the God of Israel, and according to the commandment of Cyrus, and Darius, and Artaxerxes, king of Persia. And this house was finished on the 3rd day of the month Adar, which was in the 6th year of the reign of Darius the king. The second temple stood in Jerusalem, though the nation remained under Persian control. Later, the Greeks conquered Persia, and Judea passed into Greek hands. The land changed rulers multiple times over the following centuries, but the Jewish people maintained their identity and their connection to Jerusalem and the temple. Rome arrived in 63 BC. The Roman general Pompey captured Jerusalem and made Judea a client state of Rome. The Jews chafed under Roman rule. Rome appointed puppet kings, collected heavy taxes, and showed little respect for Jewish customs. Tensions simmered for decades, until they finally exploded. In 66 AD, the Jews launched a full-scale revolt against Rome. The war was brutal. Roman legions surrounded Jerusalem in 70 AD under the command of Titus, the emperor's son. The Jewish historian Josephus, who witnessed the siege, described the horrors of starvation and desperation inside the walls. When the Romans finally breached the defenses, they showed no mercy. The temple, the second temple that had stood for nearly 600 years, was burned and destroyed. Jesus had predicted this decades earlier. In the Gospel of Luke 21:5 and 6 we read, And as some spake of the temple, how it was adorned with goodly stones and gifts, he said, As for these things which ye behold, the days will come in the which there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. That prophecy came true in 70 AD. The temple was completely demolished. The Romans slaughtered thousands and took many more as slaves throughout the empire. Jerusalem lay in ruins, its population decimated, but the Romans weren't finished with the Jewish people yet. About 60 years later, another revolt erupted. In 132 AD, a man named Simon Bar Kokhba led a second major Jewish rebellion against Rome. Many Jews believed he was the Messiah who would restore Israel's independence. For 3 years, the rebels held territory and even minted their own coins. But Rome sent massive reinforcements. The Emperor Hadrian was determined to crush Jewish resistance permanently. Roman legions systematically destroyed every rebel stronghold. The final battle took place at Beta Boca's fortress. When it fell in 135 AD, the revolt was over. Roman historians recorded that hundreds of thousands of Jews were killed. Thousands more were sold into slavery. Hadrian's revenge went beyond military victory. He wanted to erase Jewish connection to the land itself. He renamed Judea as Syria Palestina, taking the name from the Philistines, the ancient enemies of Israel, who had long since disappeared from history. Jerusalem was renamed Alia Capitolina, and Jews were banned from entering the city, except once a year. The Romans built a temple to Jupiter on the Temple Mount where God's temple had stood. The Jewish population was scattered throughout the Roman Empire and beyond. This diaspora, the scattering of the Jewish people, would last nearly 2,000 years. Small Jewish communities remained in the land, but the majority now lived far from Jerusalem, maintaining their faith and identity in foreign lands, always remembering the city and the temple that was lost. Christianity emerged from Judaism in the 1st century AD through Jesus of Nazareth, whom his followers proclaimed as the Messiah. The book of Acts 18 records Jesus' final instructions to his disciples. "But ye shall receive power, after that the Holy Ghost is come upon you, and ye shall be witnesses unto me both in Jerusalem, and in all Judea, and in Samaria, and unto the uttermost part of the earth." Christianity spread rapidly throughout the Roman Empire, eventually becoming the empire's official religion in the 4th century. Christians revered Jerusalem as the place where Jesus was crucified and resurrected. The city became a Christian pilgrimage site, and churches were built at locations connected to Jesus' life. In the 7th century, a new religion emerged in Arabia. Muhammad, the prophet of Islam, taught that he had received revelations from God through the angel Gabriel. Islam spread quickly through military conquest. By 638 AD, Muslim armies had conquered Jerusalem. The city was now holy to 3 religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Muslims believed Muhammad had made a miraculous night journey to Jerusalem before ascending to heaven. They built the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount in 691 AD, exactly where the Jewish temples had stood. The land that God had promised to Abraham's descendants through Isaac was now controlled by people who traced their heritage to Abraham, other son, Ishmael. Through the Arab peoples, the population gradually changed. Arab Muslims settled throughout the region. Many Christians and the small remaining Jewish population either converted to Islam, left, or became minorities living under Muslim rule. Arabic became the dominant language. The land that Jews called Judea and Romans had renamed Palestine was now primarily Arab and Muslim, though small Jewish and Christian communities persisted. In 995, Pope Urban II called for a military expedition to recapture Jerusalem from Muslim control. European Christians launched the First Crusade, believing they were liberating the Holy Land. In 1099, Crusader armies captured Jerusalem in a bloody siege. They massacred Muslims and Jews alike, establishing Christian keys throughout the region. The Crusader states lasted less than 2 centuries. Muslim forces, particularly under leaders like Saladin, fought to reclaim the territory. By 1291, the last Crusader stronghold had fallen. The land returned to Muslim control, passing through various dynasties until the Ottoman Turks conquered it in 1517. The Ottoman Empire ruled the region for exactly 400 years. They called it part of Philistine, the Arabic version of the Roman name Palestine. Under Ottoman rule, the land was divided into administrative districts. The population was predominantly Arab and Muslim, with smaller communities of Arab Christians, and Jews living mainly in Jerusalem, Hebron, Safed, and Tiberias, the 4 holy cities of Judaism. Life under Ottoman rule was relatively stable for centuries. The empire allowed religious minorities to practice their faiths, while paying special taxes. Jewish communities maintained their presence in the land, though they were a small minority. Most Jews still lived scattered throughout Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, always praying for a return to Jerusalem, but with no political means to make it happen. In the late 1800s, Jews in Europe faced increasing persecution. Violent attacks called pogroms swept through Russia and Eastern Europe. Even in supposedly enlightened Western Europe, anti-Jewish sentiment was rising. A Jewish journalist named Theodor Herzl witnessed this hatred firsthand in France and concluded that Jews would never be safe until they had their own nation. Herzl founded the Zionist movement in 1897, calling for the establishment of a Jewish homeland in the ancient land of Israel. Small groups of Jews began immigrating to Palestine, then still part of the Ottoman Empire. They bought land and established agricultural settlements. The Arab population, which had lived there for over 1,000 years, watched we grow in unease as these newcomers arrived, speaking of reclaiming their ancestral homeland. World War I changed everything. The Ottoman Empire sided with Germany and lost. Britain took control of Palestine under a League of Nations mandate in 1917. That same year, British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour issued a declaration that would reshape the region's future. The Balfour Declaration stated, "His Majesty's government view with favour the establishment, in Palestine, of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavours to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine." Britain promised support for a Jewish homeland, while also promising to protect Arab rights. These were contradictory promises that Britain would prove unable to keep. The Arab population, which made up about 90% of Palestine at the time, had not been consulted. They saw the Balfour Declaration as a betrayal, foreigners giving away their land to other foreigners. Jewish immigration to Palestine increased dramatically under British rule, especially after 1933, when Hitler came to power in Germany. Jews fled Europe in growing numbers, seeking safety from Nazi persecution. By the end of World War II and the Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews were murdered, the surviving Jewish population desperately needed refuge. The Arab population felt their fears were being realized. In 1920, Arabs had made up roughly 90% of Palestine's population. By 1947, Jews comprised about 1,003 of the population, having increased from about 56,000 in 1918 to over 600,000. Arabs saw their majority shrinking and their land being purchased by Jewish organizations. Riots and violence broke out repeatedly between Arab and Jewish communities. Britain found itself, Sekar, between competing nationalist movements. Jewish Zionists wanted an independent Jewish state. Palestinian Arabs wanted an independent Arab state. Both had legitimate claims, Jews pointing to their ancient connection to the land and their desperate need for a homeland after the Holocaust. Arabs pointing to their continuous presence there for over 1,000 years. Britain tried various partition plans, trying to separate the two populations, but nothing satisfied both sides. Jewish underground organizations launched attacks against British targets, demanding independence. Arab leaders rejected any partition that would create a Jewish state. The violence grew worse. Britain, exhausted by World War II and unable to resolve the conflict, announced in 1947 that it would withdraw and turn the problem over to the United Nations. The United Nations proposed a partition plan in November 1947. Palestine would be divided into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under international clear's throat. The Jewish leadership accepted the plan. Though many felt the proposed borders were inadequate, the Arab leadership and surrounding Arab nations rejected it completely. When Britain withdrew on May 14, 1948, the Jewish leadership immediately declared the establishment of the State of Israel. The next day, 5 Arab armies from Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq invaded, determined to destroy the newborn state. Arab leaders told Palestinian Arabs to temporarily leave their homes until the Jewish state was crushed. promising they would return victorious. The opposite happened. Against overwhelming odds, Israel not only survived, but expanded beyond the UN partition lines. When armistice agreements were signed in 1949, Israel controlled about 78% of what had been Mandate Palestine. Jordan occupied the West Bank and East Jerusalem, including the Old City with the Temple Mount. Egypt controlled the Gaza Strip, but for Palestinians, 1948 was the Nakba, the catastrophe. Approximately 700,000 Palestinian Arabs became refugees. Some fled the fighting, others were expelled by Israeli forces. Still others left believing Arab promises they would soon return. Their villages were destroyed or repopulated with Jewish immigrants. They scattered to refugee camps in the West Bank, Gaza, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. No Palestinian state was created. The two-state solution proposed by the UN never materialized. Arab nations refused to make peace with Israel. The Palestinians found themselves a people without a country, living under Israeli, Jordanian, or Egyptian control, or in refugee camps across the region. The conflict that began with two sons of Abraham, two nations in one womb, two peoples claiming the same land through different promises, remained unresolved. The ancient tensions had transformed into a modern conflict that continues to this day. If this journey through biblical history opened your eyes to something new, hit that subscribe button. We're committed to bringing you more stories from Scripture that connect ancient truth to modern reality. Share this video with someone who's ever wondered how this all started. Maybe a friend who's confused by the news, a family member interested in biblical prophecy, or anyone who wants to understand one of the world's most. Drop a comment below telling us what surprised you most in this story. Was it the connection between Ishmael and Isaac? The fact that this conflict is literally thousands of years old, or maybe something else entirely? Remember, understanding the past doesn't solve the present, but it does help us pray more intelligently, think more clearly, and approach complex issues with wisdom rather than just emotion. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the